Welcome to the Create the Life You Want podcast, where we break down the journey of people just like you going from dream to ownership in business acquisitions, franchises, and startups. I'm your host, Jeremy Ames. Today's episode is brought to you ad-free by Guidant Financial. Guidant is America's leading company helping aspiring entrepreneurs use retirement funds to buy or start businesses. If you're committed to buying or starting a business, you can find out more about your funding options by going to www.guidantfinancial.com. That's Guidant financial.com. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Create the Life You Want podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Ames, and today I am joined by Brad Williams. And today's going to be kind of fun because often when we're talking to entrepreneurs, we're talking to them after they have been in business for many years. And sometimes they even forget what it was like when they were in the early stages. And that's not the case with Brad. He is smack dab in the middle of trying to get this new business launched. And we're going to hear about the franchise that he selected and a little bit about the strategy of why he chose that and how he's going about sort of building his long-term wealth plan from there. So, Brad, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to share my story and hopefully help others do the same.
Great. Well, Brad, let's start with, did you know you always wanted to be an entrepreneur, or what was the point at which you thought, hey, I might want to own a business at some point?
So, I've been with the company for 25 years and started out at the ground level and always wanted to better myself. I looked at the opportunities. Yeah, probably the last 5 years more, I've kind of looked into the opportunity of getting into it, but I would say I knew about 20 years ago that I wanted to have my own business and be my own boss. Right?
So you've known for 20 years. What took you so long, Brad?
Financial. Which I'm sure a lot of people, understand that piece. It's not an easy piece unless, you get fortunate and get that, but building financial, as you know very well, making sure I invest my money in the right spots to be able to help me do what I'm doing today.
Got it. So you've wanted to do this for 20 years. You've been sort of looking at opportunities off and on a little more seriously over the last 5 years as you've accumulated enough capital to have some consideration to put down. So tell us a little bit about that search. You've been sort of dabbling around for 5 years. What changed that finally pushed you over the edge that said, hey, now's the time?
Like I said, in the last 5 years, I've been really looking, had some opportunities with some other investors that we looked into some franchises together as a group. Also, in that venture, they didn't end up panning out. There was somebody already had the territory. Just been still looking for what the opportunity is. I was open to where or what it's going to be, right? I looked into opportunities of even starting my own food truck. I just knew I wanted to do something, and I really liked smoking barbecue at the time. So I thought, hey, maybe I'll get all these food trucks are starting out. Maybe I should look into that. I looked into it, and I don't know, that just, you got to look at all aspects of what you're going to put into it, and that doing those kind of things. There's a lot involved in weekend hours and making sure you cover that, and festivals, all that kind of good stuff. But so my wife and I wanted something simple, right? So we kind of backed away from that. We had an opportunity to buy a bakery at one point. We lived in Illinois at the time. We actually moved to Wisconsin as part of this venture with scooters because somebody had the territory in Illinois, and then they're like, hey, well, my wife always wanted to move back to where her family's from, so she's from Wisconsin, and we made it work, and everything kind of fell in place too as we moved up here, sold a house, bought a house, going through the scooters, finding a location to build the scooters. You get a territory, and then you got to find a spot within that territory unless you're ahead of the game. And my next one, I'll be ahead of that game to make sure, because it's just, you want to make sure you find that spot. That's a tough piece in the franchise business. You got to find a spot to do it right, and find a location. You can sign a franchise agreement if you you want to pay the fee and do that. But there's been a lot of people I've talked to in the last 5 years have had a hard time finding that piece of it, right? It's whether you want to lease a spot or you want to purchase land. We really wanted to purchase the land in ours, so it worked out really well. But took a little bit of a marathon of 5 months to get that purchase agreement piece down, because the seller, of course, wants to make sure everything fits for all the people around them too. So interesting piece.
Well, I want to stick a pin in that, Brad, and come back to the real estate piece. But I want to back up to the journey here, because you said you were searching a few different options. You looked into a food truck at one point. Sounds like you decided that was misaligned with your goals as a family, right? What it was going to require of you didn't really fit.
Yep.
And then you said you had a chance to buy a bakery. Tell us about that. Tell us about the process of looking at that bakery and why ultimately you decided it wasn't the right fit.
Yeah, so another, family piece also involved with that of, looking at a bakery. One locally came open. We looked at it, looked at the financials of it. Didn't look terrible, but the more you look into it, a bakery, you gotta be up early in the morning, very very early, and start getting them donuts rolling and pies and all that good stuff. So from a family standpoint and just being able to grow it, was a little bit of my concern too. Just you're a bakery in a decent sized town, but how do you grow that? Another location, we were looking at those kind of options. I mean, we want to be able to grow, right? And in my career, I've been able to really grow, and really want to keep that opportunity to grow within whatever business we were going to do. So that's why another reason why we chose to.
Yeah, so sounds like the bakery wasn't a good fit again on the when you wanted to work and how you wanted your family to operate, but also it was just misaligned when you thought about growth opportunities for you. Maybe you could talk before we go on to the next thing that you evaluated a little bit about what you did in your career. What kind of skills did you develop that you were expecting or hoping to put to work in a new venture?
Yeah, so like I said, I started 25 years ago, and as an not necessarily entry level, but in the ag business. That's what my background is. So started with a soybean processing plant 25 years ago. Started out on the hourly side, right? And that's where my journey kind of started. My father managed a grocery business most of my life, so seeing my father, be a leader in that, it's always gave me the drive to want to do that too, and do the best I can for me and my family and others. So in that journey with the 25 years, it was a union facility there. So I was hourly, tried to help out where I could, and show my leadership skills of just, being a good employee and doing the things there. But it's a union facility, and I thought, well, hey, I want to do some leadership things. Maybe I'll go for the president of the union, right? So I did, and everybody enjoyed that piece of me being the president of the union for 5 years there, and so I built leadership skills there, and then an opportunity came up to be a entry-level management at the facility, and I talked with the management there, and they actually approached me first and asked me if I wanted to. They really liked the way I handled the union, and the company side of things together, and said they thought I'd be a good fit. So they asked me to put my application in and resume, and so ended up being the manager of the elevator portion of the soybean processing plant there. And then did that. Got in management for about 8 years, and then production manager position opened up. They had hired a lot of engineers in the past, and they wanted to kind of change that because the engineers, wanted to always move on and expand their portfolio of not just one facility. So they wanted a little stability. So they said, hey, we really think you'd be the good fit for that. So they asked me to be the production manager of the facility. So a little different, avenue there of be in the production part of it, but so did that for 5 years before. So right about the timing when I was starting to do all this, I started that position, and then you're doing well there, and it's like, okay, I still want to do my own thing too. So that opportunity of getting that leadership in both of those has been really fortunate. There's not a lot of growth that you can do within that business, besides moving to. So, but I knew this is where I wanted to be, doing my own thing.
Yeah, so it sounds like you got some early opportunities to develop your leadership skills within the union, and then you got a chance to sort of build and manage teams as a manager, and then you got a chance to sort of oversee operations of an actual business, right? How you make the donuts, so to speak, if it were a bakery. Um, but it sounds like you were capped in terms of long-term growth, and that's really the thing that pushed you to keep looking for something else. Was, hey, I feel like I'm at the ceiling for what I can do here. Am I reading that right?
Well, I mean, yeah, you still had opportunity to be the plant facility manager, right? But I just knew all along through my journey that I wanted to be that owner, right, or entrepreneur, or own my own business. And what was that piece still going to be? So that was my
Got it. So
goal.
you rejected the bakery, and then it sounds like you were looking at some other opportunities with other investors, and we're really focused on the franchise space. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. Why franchise, and what did or didn't work about these potential partnerships that you were going to do with a few other people?
So the franchise um, we were looking into was Texas Roadhouse. Actually, there was
Okay.
five of us talking through that piece. I had met a good friend of mine years ago. He's an investor. He's into a lot of different things, and he talked to me. I always told him my story, and he's like, "Well, there's a venture we're looking into. Not saying it's gonna happen, but we're gonna start that venture, and we wanted to know if you want to be a piece of that." And we got into it, and then of course the territory that we all wanted in my hometown wasn't there, and at the time, I didn't really want to move at the time either. My father was having some health issues, needed me, so I didn't want to move either. So that wasn't an option for me at the time. So that kind of held us a little bit too, I would say. Of course, because you told you we moved to Wisconsin, but um, had my father still been around, I probably would have had to look at other avenues in Illinois, but I didn't feel the market was great there. So um,
Yeah.
it, things have happened, but been, I've been blessed with how it's kind of went, except for my father.
So it sounds like the Texas Roadhouse deal didn't come together because you couldn't find a location or an area where you could open one that was going to fit with you sort of operating it. Were there other things you looked at between then and discovering scooters?
So yeah, we looked into Culver's, we looked into Chick-fil-A, um, looked into a couple others too, but just financially wasn't going to fit for us, right? You have to have a lot more capital than what we have, or have to, talk with my good friend that's an investor too, and he probably would have went in with me, but I got to the point where it's like I don't know, I kind of want to be I don't really want a partner, because then what if something happens? Then you got to look at the partnership of it. So my wife and I really wanted to, all right, let's hone in on just something that we can do, right? Just without an investor with us, or a partner. So then we started looking at just simple things. Um, I can go into how this whole scooter thing comes, if you would like to venture that way. 'Cause
I do. I just want to reinforce that what I'm hearing from you is originally you were looking at some of these larger deals. You're looking at Texas Roadhouses, you're looking at Culver's, you're looking at Chick-fil-A's. Those are the kind of things that are probably $1 million plus in terms
yeah,
of capital that you're bringing to the total. And the experience with that was you realize what was holding you back there is that you didn't really want a partner. You didn't want somebody you were going to be beholden to. You didn't want somebody that held the purse strings, that was going to have more control than you if something didn't go right. And so you sort of shrunk then the size of a deal you were looking for.
Yep.
So I guess through that part, now you've shrunk the size, you've decided with your wife, hey, we're going to do something we can do on our own. Now what? How do you go find something from there?
Yeah, so, I busy at work and I've worked a lot of long hours there, but there was on a business trip in the middle of Iowa, so Iowa Falls, Iowa. Had a business trip to go to there. It's a very small town. I can't remember what it was, 4 or 5,000 people maybe. But we got up in the morning to go to the conference training, and of course I like coffee, so I didn't get any at the hotel. So I see this new spot. I've never heard of scooters, and here we are. So we pulled past it, and I told my coworker at the time, I said, hey, let's pull in and get a coffee. He's like, I'm not really a coffee guy, but yeah, let's go. So we pulled in, and scooters has got this thing when after you order, you want to make sure you make an amazing experience for a person, that's coming in. You want your customer to really be personal. So, they're really personal with you, and then after you do your order, they're like, all right, scoot on around. So you scoot around to the drive-thru. Kind of cool little phrase that they use there, but as we're waiting for the coffee, there's a sign there that says franchise opportunity. And me, of course, thinking about things. I'm like, I sent it to my wife, and I'm like, hey, let's take a look at that. And she's like, started doing our little research. She was a barista in college here in Wisconsin, so that really intrigued her. Hey, yeah, coffee. And what really intrigued me is simple, right? So not real complex. Do a little food, some drinks. So it seemed really appealing. So we looked into it and started the process. As we hadn't really done a lot of the process. When we did with the Texas Roadhouse, one of the other investors was kind of leading that through the franchise part of it. So this was my first or our first time looking into franchise and what does it take and what steps you take, right? So there's a lot of pieces involved in that before they just say, hey, it's you too, right? They want to make sure we fit each other.
So you start looking at scooters just because you happen to go by one on a business trip, and it sounds like it fits. When you looked at scooters, what was the sort of estimated investment amount that they were projecting, right, to get a store up and functional?
It could be anywhere from 1.2 to 1.6, depending on your territory, or where you're at.
So 1.2 to 1.6, is that because you're factoring in building a building?
Yep.
In that calculation?
Kiosk, you can do an end cap kiosk, depending on those two. You could buy a building and like an old bank some people are doing, and they spend the money there, so it's a little cheaper maybe to do that, right?
So let's talk about that decision then, Brad, because my guess is based on that you probably have $350,000 to $500,000 if you're just going to go lease a space and open a scooters. But you decide, hey, I want to buy the underlying real estate here, and not just the building, but you actually want to own the land as well. So talk to us about where that came from and why that was in your head.
Well, so, just real estate is always a good thing to be in, right? Doesn't tend to ever go really down, so we really wanted to own. But one of the other big pieces, once you start looking deeper into things, leases can be expensive, depending on where you want, and then say if something was to happen, you want to change your vision, do something, having the piece of property there is also good. But long term, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm hoping scooters is forever, right? But the owning, you can get your investment part of it is depends on how you invest it, but you can either, finance it, right? And that can save you a little bit of money too, right? Per month of what you got to pay. Because leases can be very expensive.
Yeah, so you decide you want to buy the real estate and build it out. Now, how do you figure out how to finance all that? Because now you got to finance not just the tenant improvements for a business, not just the franchise fee and all of the inventory. You also now got to go buy some land and do some construction.
Yeah, so yeah, the financial part of it, is a big piece, of course. And so for us, we want to make sure we have everything right that we need to do that too. So um, we were through Scooters Coffee. They have some people that help you with capital financing and banks to work with, and we had never ventured into that piece of it yet. We knew we should be in good shape, but you never know, right? So what lending institutions want, and different ones can be a little different of what they want down, to how much they want you to inject into it. And so we ended up looking at that piece, and then um, looked at we need to inject a little bit more money, right? So we didn't have everything financially, but we did, and that's where they brought up ROPS to us, that's something we'd never heard of. So we heard about ROPS, and then they tell you about how you can roll your 401k, right? So that's an exciting thing that a lot of people don't know about.
Got it. So let me make sure I understand. So you have some savings that you have put aside, and that's been the primary thing when you started this search, that you're thinking, hey, I'm going to put this money to work in a new business.
Yep.
Now, as you're looking at scooters and looking at buying the underlying real estate, you're expecting, hey, I'm going to go get a loan. And you start to do some of that research with the banks to figure out how much am I going to have to put down and how much am I going to have left to pay for this other stuff. And then you realize, wait a second, I'm going to need more money, right? The bank will give me this much. I've got this much in savings. And was it the franchisor or the lender? Who was the one that said, hey, retirement funds, this is another vehicle you have. I can see it on your balance sheet here. Go talk to these guys.
The lender actually brought up ROPS to us. The first Capital Solutions, I believe it was. I don't remember who it was. Where we had to go with a different bank because they don't do our territory anymore. So we've had quite a few changes of that to try to find who we are. So I'm trying to think of who exactly was the one that actually brought it up.
It's not important. I guess the thing is, you got connected that way. So now you've got a three-pronged financing strategy. You've got some personal savings, you've got some retirement funds coming in, and you've got some type of a bank loan. Now, was this an SBA-backed loan, or are you doing just a straight commercial real estate loan with the bank?
We're doing SBA.
SBA, got it. And can you just tell people a little bit, you obviously did your research on the SBA. Tell them a little bit about what you learned about how SBA loans work in conjunction with if you want to buy and build out the real estate.
With an SBA, you can put 10% down, 10% injection into it. With the conventional, you have to do 20%. And that was a big kicker for us, right? So we were like, well, you want to do the SBA because we don't have to put as much in. We want to keep as much liquid as we can too. So that was a big piece for us as far as choosing the SBA. But we did learn a lot of things with the SBA, or not with the SBA, but just with using ROPS. There was a lot, there's a lot of different things you have to do, which is, might steer some people from it versus, a lot of people like to do an LLC versus a corporation. With the ROPS situation, you do a corporation.
Tell me a little bit about the difference between the conventional loan and the SBA loan. Sounds like one distinction you saw was with the SBA loan, you could put less money down. Did you find that the rates were significantly different? I know the SBA has, maybe in your case, they haven't gotten back to the place where they're charging the guarantee fee. But walk me through the analysis you did of comparing those two things and why you decided the SBA was the right choice.
So to be honest, rate-wise, we didn't really look at a whole lot because there wasn't a lot of difference there that we had seen. It was more about the injection or how much to put down was a big factor for us. But rates and that, we didn't really do a lot of digging on it. We really want to keep a lot of the liquid because, your first couple of years starting a business out, you want to make sure you got some capital to work with, liquid to work with, anything you can to work with. You can, in my mind, and a lot of my friends and investors, you can make it 2 years. That first lot of places that even franchise don't tell you, but in the first 2 years, you want to prepare for, right? If you can survive 2 years, I think there's a lot of businesses you do very well, right? But the first two can go really well, or you're gonna have to invest a little more money.
Yeah, I was looking at one study recently, and the data they showed in the study was that doubling your cash reserves halved your chances of failure, right? Which makes intuitive sense. If you have more money stocked away, you've got cash when things go sideways, you've got dollars to invest when something goes wrong. And maybe more importantly, one of the things I've seen with a lot of business owners is that the tighter cash gets, the less good they are at decision making. They tend to squeeze and not actually spend on the things they need to, right? Hey, I need to hire a good employee to do this. Hey, I need to get this equipment fixed in advance. And those end up being things that accumulate over time and create problems for the business. Well, Brad, you are in the early stages of this, right? So why don't you tell us where you are at in your cycle here? Because I believe you're not open yet, right? So you're on the path, but not quite there yet.
Yeah, so, you like to think it's going to go fast just because you got a purchase agreement or an LOI in place, right? So back in November, we had an LOI in place. So we're like, hey, all right, we're gonna start, the ball's gonna roll good here. So, long story short, just 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks ago, we actually signed the purchase agreement. So, seller had a lot going on. There's a big parcel that they own and dividing it up. And how do you want to divide it up? And we wanted a full acre. You only need about a third to a half acre really to do a scooters. It's a very small footprint that you need. We wanted to do, we went ahead and found a great spot, great price point for up here around the Milwaukee area. So we went full acre. So, but in the journey we just signed the purchase agreement. Now, we were fortunate enough to be connected with another franchisee here in Wisconsin, and he has 14 locations. 39 39 total is what he has reserved to build, and he treated us like he was his own. And we asked who's going to be the builder, who have you used, who's this, and he really helped us out and said, hey, I'll tell you right now, you want to go with these people, the architects, the civils, we are all under one blanket. So sometimes you get
Faster.
A little craziness in those too, but I'm agreeing and stuff. But we just started the permitting phase. They're doing some surveys right now. That is, like I say, that's going to take about 3 months, 3.5 months, maybe. If it go, it could go sooner, hopefully, but it could go longer too. But so hopefully 3 to 4 months there, and then we'll break ground hopefully here in 3 to 4 months, and then. Right now, build for it is projected to be about 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, so that's something worth putting an exclamation point on, right? The ability to tap into a successful franchisee already in the network. Your chances of having a really smooth experience with construction the first time doing it are not very high if you're starting from scratch. So you got the wisdom of someone who's done this a few times, probably worked through many of the construction firms in Wisconsin to figure out, hey, these are the right guys to work with. Yeah. So that's fantastic.
Good.
So it sounds like about 4 months between the time that you first engaged with scooters until you were at a point where you found a location and were able to put an LOI down. Now it's been another 4-5 months, 4-ish months to get to the point where you've got a deal under contract, and now you got some time frame for permitting. When are you thinking you're going to be open? Sounds like it's going to be about a year long plus journey to get from the point that you said, hey, this is the business model I want to go with, to having something open for business?
Yeah, so like I said, that 8 months is kind of what they say, but I like to be a little bit, give it a little extra cushion because you never know, and if it happens sooner, great. But so I'm thinking by the end of the year, hopefully, first of the year, first of next year
Yeah.
is when we hope to have our opening.
Okay, so I have one more question for you then, Brad, when I think about this, because you started this process in August, right? And now we're talking about maybe the beginning of 2026 when your doors are open. So, what are you doing in the interim? Like, how are you paying your mortgage? How are you keeping things in line? Like, what was the plan? Did you leave your job? Have you stayed in your job in order to have some income? Tell us a little bit about that.
So with the whole oh, we're echoing. With the Robs, you can't roll over an active 401k. So um, there was another piece of the puzzle that I had to change is I couldn't stay with my current employer. We were going to move to Wisconsin, so we knew that was going to change anyway. So I looked for an employer up here in Wisconsin, and there's another ag facility. I put my name out there in Indeed and searched around, and then I had a recruiter actually reach out to me and say, hey, I think we got a good fit for a manager of a soy processing plant that's going to open up here. So um, I ended up sending my resume in, got in with the CEO, got an interview, and he wanted me to start. And it's a brand new build in Wisconsin that they're doing. So it's a new venture that they're getting into with the crushing side of things. So that was exciting, and was able to make that happen. They said they didn't want to hire for a few months or have me in place for a few months. If they offered me the job, would that be a problem? And I'm like, absolutely not. I have to move. So,
Yeah.
if I do, when you do sign these franchise agreements, there's a lot of things too that they have in pieces and puzzle that you have to live within 2 hours of the franchise where you're opening. But we had to live up here, so we had to move up here in order to stay, in our franchise agreement also too, because we said we're going to move up here. So you got to make sure that happens, and timing, and then you're like, oh, a lot of pieces of the puzzle here, right? So, but we have been very, very, very blessed with everything falling in place.
Well, Brad, I just want to commend you, man. It's your strategy is really smart. I think some people, when they're going to make a transition like this, they start with, hey, I'm just going to pay myself a small salary as I'm doing the things to get the business off the ground, and they start draining those cash reserves. So, love that you said, hey, I've got a while this thing's building out to achieve my vision of owning the land, so I'm going to go get a job and create some cash on the sidelines while I work through this, and that's going to help give me a longer runway for the business.
Yeah, and I'm actually, looking at the opportunity of probably, I thought, hey, I would maybe be the manager of the first, you know, uh, kiosk that we open because, we eventually hopefully want to grow this. But I thought maybe I'll just be strictly the manager. But for the first 2 years, I'm thinking I might stay working too, which a lot of people, want to
Yeah.
say, like you said, want to pay yourself and go off and do it right away. And I had the opportunity to do either, but I think I'm really liking the job that I'm doing right now. I love managing people. I love helping and getting this footprint off the ground, and really would like to stay working with the CEO to get his business where it needs to be too. It's not all just always about me, but I want to
Yeah.
make sure we're both successful, and that I was given this opportunity to come up here, right? So, and blessed to be able to still work during this. So, I want to make sure I take care of my people, right?
Well, and Brad, I just want to reinforce what I hear in your story is a commitment to the right things in the long term, right? You're looking at this business model, you're saying, I want to own the underlying real estate. I know it's going to create more work, I know it's going to create more delay, but this is part of building for the long run. And same thing is true of getting a job and even potentially working two jobs while you get this new business off the ground until it's at a point where it can really operate. I interviewed a guy not long ago who owns 22 franchise units or 23 franchise units of Sport Clips. And the interesting thing was he started the business and he had two open, and then he went back to work for 6 years because things were tight on the cash side. And by going back to work for 6 years, he was able to take those 2 stores to 5 stores. And then when he finally left his job, then they were just ready to catapult into the stratosphere because they had already learned the model. He had created lots of runway and the ability to reinvest cash back into the business because he wasn't pulling personal expenses off of it. So I hope that same future is out there for you, Brad.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's exciting, but it can be nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of being a business owner. The reason the rewards are so significant is because not everyone's willing to put it on the line. But even just the way that you're talking about the care you have for the job you're at and taking care of employees, like that's the kind of mentality that leads people to be successful. So, Brad, really appreciate you taking the time today to share a little bit with us about your journey. I'd love to connect with you again in a year or two after you get this thing up and check in when it's even crazier. You think it's crazy now? Wait till you get this thing up and all the real challenges start.
Right. Oh yeah. No, I'm with you. But no, I'd love to do it again in a year and see where we're at and tell my story. Right. One of my biggest things in this whole venture that I told my wife, this all we get into this. One of the biggest things I want to do, right, is take care of my people, but and make them feel more than what I ever have. But I also, if I'm very successful in this business, I want to find at least one person, whether it's a good friend, a new acquaintance, but I would love for somebody to do the same thing and take the risk that I'm taking today, because it's not easy and it's not an easy path. If you give up on challenges easy, you won't make it to the point where we're at today, because they don't make it easy for you, right? And they shouldn't. But my goal is to make sure somebody else does it.
Awesome. Love it, Brad. That's a great spot to end. Really want to thank you for your time. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to tell my story.
Thanks for listening to the Create the Life You Want podcast. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to future episodes by clicking the subscribe button, you know where. If you're an aspiring business owner, you may also want to subscribe to the Create the Life You Want newsletter for more inspiration and tips delivered to your inbox every week. You can find the link to that in the show notes, as well as on my personal website, jeremyames.com. If you've already decided you want to start or buy a business, consider exploring your financing options by heading to our sponsor's website at www.guidantfinancial.com. That's GUIDANT financial.com. See you in the next episode.